What they've come to expect of this government is that it raises the cost of living. The cost of government is driving up the cost of goods, and now the cost of interest. You know, $200 billion of the $500 billion in deficits had nothing to do with COVID, according to the parliamentary budget officer. And even that so-called COVID spending included the ArriveCan app, an app that could have been designed in a weekend for $250,000 but cost $54 million. The government claims that $1.2 million of that went to a company called Think On. That company says it didn't get that money. Who did?
Here.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the appropriate ministers are looking into this and making sure that the mistake that was made by public servants in sharing information is followed up on. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, it's important to remember that we did a lot of things in a very unprecedented way during an unprecedented pandemic, including delivering CERB checks within weeks of people having to stay home from jobs in ways that were unthinkable only a few months before. We were there to support small businesses with record support so that we could come roaring back as an economy immediately after. Yes, we stepped up in a very rapid way to support Canadians, and that's what Canadians know got us through this pandemic.
The Honourable Opposition.
Oh, the Prime Minister can't tell us who got the $1.2 million. He blames public servants for the mistake. Surely, in the weeks since he learned out about it, he could have learned of this misappropriation. He could have found out where the money went, but he hasn't. It's not the only example. There's also the $400,000 trip to London, of which there was a $6,000 suite for one night. Just another example of the massive Liberal waste that has contributed to the inflationary deficits we now face. So if he can't tell us which company got the money, can he at least tell us who got the $6,000 a night room?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
As Canadians know, we had a large delegation, including a number of previous Prime Ministers and former Governor Generals in London for...
To interrupt the Right Honourable Prime Minister, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition asked a question. I'm sure he wants to hear the answer. So I'm just going to ask everyone to calm down, and so we can hear the answer. The Right Honourable Prime Minister, from the top, please.
That's a lot of words.
Mr. Speaker, to mark the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, Canada had a large delegation that went to London to the funeral, including a number of former Prime Ministers and former Governors General. We stayed in the same hotel. Mr. Speaker, having a strong Canadian presence there as one of the top realm countries was expected of us, and it was important to see all Canadians so well represented together at the funerals.
Canadians are now getting the bill for the Prime Minister's $500 billion of inflationary deficits that first drove up inflation and now drive up interest rates. For a typical family that bought a typical home with a typical mortgage 5 years ago but are now up for renewal, they're paying $7,000 more per year. The Prime Minister said that the government was going to take on all this debt so that Canadians wouldn't have to, as if they don't have to pay back government debt. If that were the case, though, then who's going to pay the extra mortgage payments for these families?
Here, here, here.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, through the pandemic, we made the decision to support Canadian families, to support workers, to support small businesses, to make sure Canadians could hold on and to make sure our economy could hold on through an unprecedented, historic pandemic. At the same time, we were there to support Canadians as the economy gets going again, and we're there to support them now with help with the GST rebate that's going to arrive in the coming weeks, and with direct support for dental care and for low-income renters. The question, Mr. Speaker, is why are Conservative politicians not choosing to support Canadians on dental and rental?
Here, here.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister caused this inflation crisis. Even Mark Carney, who will be the successor to the current Liberal leader, is saying that inflation is a homegrown problem. He's right. It's caused by the $500 billion of inflationary deficits that have bid up the cost of the goods we buy and the interest that we pay. And today, rates went up another half point, meaning many families will be handing in their keys to the banks because they won't be able to afford those bills. Has the Prime Minister been briefed by his officials on how many Canadians will lose their homes because of the higher interest rates that his inflationary policies have caused?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, inflation is a worldwide problem right now, but it is a challenge faced by Canadian families that we will continue to support them through. That's why we're delivering supports for families right now in a targeted way, a doubling of the GST credit that will arrive in the coming weeks in their bank accounts, moving forward on support for dental care, moving forward on support for low-income renters, things that the Conservative Party is continuing not just to vote against but to block, and we will continue to do more. We will continue to be there for Canadians during the challenging times ahead, because that's what Canadians expect of their government.